Who are these people? 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 Who are these people?
I watched a man decide to stand up for us, and I watched them take him away. So I had to break down your respect for the process, but the process won't be saved. Hi, I'm Nancy, and I love ice cream.
I enjoy it.
But not as much as watching people forced out of their homes.
I like it better than anything else.
Watching people forced out in the streets to live alone, and knowing that I own every homeless set of bones.
I don't know why, but it seems to agree with me. I have a lot of energy.
It's all more support from my hideous and ill-gotten throne, the weight of which is too much for you to bear alone. Which is why you ended up threadbare alone, kicked off your benefits and left to your own. The diner that you worked at was told it could open its doors, but there's no clientele, and it's probably just as well, because half of the staff didn't last, so they can't come to work anymore. You can't expect a corpse to pull itself through the door to flip omelets for $8 an hour anymore. Make your own food, clean your own floors, fake your own news, fill a whole morgue. Get a film crew out front, but don't let them in the doors. Let's keep it frontline heroes, America's soldiers, you know the score. Joe knows the score. I watched a man decide to stand up for us, and I watched them take him away. So I had to break down your respect for the process, but the process won't be saved.
Who are these people?
Stop saying the election is so goddamn important and start telling Joe he needs to rein in his supporters. Oh, that's right. Joe can't even rein in his tongue behind his resin molars. Pardon me for asking for some faculties from someone who is vying to control us. The man is not quite yet speechless, but you can bet he's soulless. And if you think he can stop the greatest threat that's ever held a public office, you might be Joe's equal in the ignorance department. But I can guarantee you we will finish what we started. A rabid coalition of activists and politicians, sex workers, educators, artists. Those of us who followed Bernie so close and fell the farthest. Who will not falter until all of us are cared for, regardless of whether it would turn a profit. Now I am not a leader or a teacher or a prophet, but I am here to proudly say today is the day I start campaigning for the role of Speaker of the House that we will build from the bones of the old Congress. And when I say bones, I do not mean framework or stones, I mean literally bones of the old guard keeping us from progress. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest. Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest.
Who are these people?
The calm before the storm, the calm before the harvest. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
Who are these people?
Tonight's the last dawn before things get their darkest. Told to come alone. Joe said if you vote for him, he'll abdicate his throne as the father of the crime bill, soul of Jim Crow. Proud to live and vote as a Strom Thurmond clone. If he tried to kiss your daughter with a camera rolling, he'll try more than kissing her alone. Cozy up with Jill for a photo like a portrait of the Kissingers at home. You know I hate to kill the messenger, but if he's gotta go, we can FaceTime. Slit his throat while he stares into the phone. Like if you don't know, kitten, now you know. This is where austerity has gotten us. This is all that palpable excitement for a 20-year wait on forgiveness for your student loans. But a distraction's a distraction, and it's time to see some action. So here's one last song for Joe, before I try to keep his name out of the lyrics in my phone. Try to shift the focus to our senators and everyone in Congress who is all too happy to be hidden while we're wasted to the bone. It is not food insecure, it's starvation, and it lurks in almost half the country's homes. So if you plan to lay down, hold your nose and vote for Joe, have the guts to admit that you chose to submit, and that you decided lending your support to a pedophile must be a step towards hope. That a vote for a man that spent his whole life implementing laws that dehumanized people of color is a vote against fascism. When you know damn well he's just a kinder, dumber face on the same white nationalism. So baby, throw away your scruples with the memories of your activism. Watch your weak resistance usher in a fucking cataclysm. Elect a bigot war pig and say you're gonna push him into pacifism. That's some bootlicker Stockholm hostage liberal masochism. Bootlicker Stockholm hostage liberal masochism. Baby, that's some fucking bootlicker Stockholm hostage liberal masochism. God, that's some fucking bootlicker Stockholm hostage liberal masochism. That's some fucking...
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the or flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself. Hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send 1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the capital wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. Know to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak, too hungry to stand, they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in '08. One was condemned in '16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in '08. One was condemned in '16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in '08. One was condemned in '16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in '08. One was condemned in '16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Hey, everyone. What's up? Oh, God. It's Tuesday night. I'm ready to go. It's Indie News Now Live. So I'm glad you're here. Glad you're hanging out. Thank you for joining me. This is Indy, if you couldn't read on my face, because you might be listening on a podcast. So, yeah. Wow, what a crazy week. There's so much happening out there. Keeping track of it all and keeping your head on a swivel is a real challenge these days. And not getting overwhelmed because everybody's got real life going on. Everybody's got stuff that they're trying to kind of deal with outside of the news, not just.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Oh, thank you, whoever that was. I didn't get the stream alert. I don't know why. Thank you, Oz, $5. Appreciate that. Let me put that up here because I can. Nope, not there. Here. So yes, I am Indy. This is INN, and this is Indie News Now. For those who don't know, thank you, Oz. co-fi.com/Indie News Network. You can also go to IndieNewsNow.com/live and watch us live over there. People are already working on their turkeys. Apparently, we have ours defrosting, and I like this holiday, but it's going to be a long one. We're going to have I think 6 days home with the kids. I think they gave them Cyber Monday off as well. So keeping them entertained and not fighting each other is a challenge, and trying to stay somewhat plugged into what's happening in the world, because I think that they actually leverage and take advantage of holidays like this where people aren't necessarily paying attention as closely as they are regularly to pull some shit. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump, for example, escalates stuff in Venezuela while we're having a Thanksgiving turkey. It's not unlike the system to do that. Yes, Gladwin, as the system intended. So we are live over on 9 platforms right now. We're live on YouTube at youtube.com/Indie News Network. We're at INN. We're also live at youtube.com/Indie@INN. I have a monetized YouTube channel that the only thing that goes there are shorter clips from How Do We Miss That and these live streams. Nothing else. So if you ever want to check that out, feel free. We're live at rumble.com/C/Indie News Network. So go subscribe over there, Rumble. You can also tip us or monthly subscribe over there. We get 100% of the money if you hit that red button to subscribe. You can even gift a subscription to someone, which gives a viewer of the channel 30-day free subscription. That won't refresh automatically. If you subscribe yourself, it does. We're also live over at Substack. We're live at IndieMediaToday.com. I am, of course, a big fan of that platform. I publish there every day, and you can subscribe monthly or annually. I think it's $5 a month. There might even be a Black Friday discount. I think I have it down to $45 a year. So you get a discount for subscribing annually, and you support independent media, which is the most important thing. Then there's the ways like co-fi.com/Indie News Network. Again, was supposed to pop something up on stream here, but it didn't. And then also, yeah, that's really weird. That's supposed to be there too. Yeah, INNnewsletter.com. That's a whole other newsletter that I publish. And that is a collection of all of the people at INN, including Reef and Colin, who will be live tomorrow night for INN News. Reef actually published an article tonight about a guy running for governor of Colorado that's shady as hell, that he's been paying attention to, and he wants people to be aware of. So check that out tomorrow night. Thursday night, I was hoping to have a one-on-one with Ryan Christian, but that did not end up happening yesterday. So we're going to take a couple of nights off. I think Angel's got some streams for Friday and Saturday. So there will be stuff happening at the network. Steve is planning on doing a Thanksgiving morning stream. So there will be something happening over on Twitch and Kick and Twitter. So check that out. Again, before we go live, I just mentioned all the places that you can support, but we did get a couple of new subscribers and supporters this week. So thank you. Witchigo, that's our friend Sam Hill, and then Donna Everett as well. Thank you so much, really, for supporting independent media. Oz the Boomer, he should be highlighted because he's one of the contributors that we adore, and that's family here that regularly throws us a couple of bucks whenever he can. I appreciate it. And throw Oz a couple of bucks if you can. Beauty and the Boomer, whenever they come back. Hopefully they are coming back sometime soon. Shout out and love to Shanda. We're going to give an update on Shanda and Aspen and Natalia later on tonight. And unfortunately, I don't have good news about any of that stuff. But I've been following these stories, and I need to give you an update. And I know everybody cares deeply about all these people. I mean, and speaking of people, and of course, my stream deck just froze. It's supposed to say, who are these people? Thanks, Jimmy. Jimmy does that to me all the time. And then all of a sudden, he'll interrupt me. So, support independent media. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network.
Who are these people?
PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Thanks, Jimmy. IndieNewsNow.com, INNNewsletter.com, and IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live right now again, as I mentioned earlier. Hopefully we're holding firm. We had some challenges on Thursday night. I tried to go live with Jesse Jett for American Tradition, and we kept getting interrupted. The stream kept getting dropped. Like every time he would perform a spoken word piece, it would drop mid-piece and then pick right back up. And it was so frustrating and annoying. We decided to can it and try again next time. And then we had, thank you. And then we also had some challenges on Saturday. Thank you, Christopher. That's that Topher. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. You hooked us up a couple weeks ago. I didn't know who it was. Now I know. That makes sense. All right. Thanks, brother. Shit, I just got sidetracked. Anyway, we're gonna do a bunch of stories. I have a ton of material here tonight. My tabs looks like Reef does for boats, and you don't get to see that, but man, you can barely see the tabs. There's so many that he's got, but I'm going to get to it, and we'll get to our first article now. Normally, we warm up before we get into a Fuck Israel segment, but this week I got so much, I'm jumping right into it. A lot of you people may know Eleanor Goldfield. She's an independent live streamer, podcaster, journalist, part of the Project Censored, and she and Lee Camp are I think they're married. I know they have a kid together. Pretty sure they're married too. But she wrote an article about international law isn't for the oppressed. And this is specifically about the UN vote on Palestine and the abstention of China and Russia, and basically them allowing for genocide to continue. So Eleanor writes that it was November 29th, 10 days from now, and 78 years ago. I'm not sure if looking at pictures of it remind me of Dr. Strangelove because of the black and white photography in 1940 styling, or because of the immense evil that room was about to unleash. Horrors and terrorism that they couldn't possibly have conceived of then. That with their fleeting votes, they would ultimately usher in the world's first live stream genocide. Not to give them too much credit, as they were flippant enough about the forthcoming Nakba, which, when it came, resulted in almost 750,000 Palestinians being ethnically cleansed from their homelands. Again, that is the picture of the UN General Assembly from November 29th, 1947. Okay. When it didn't stop there, because genociders never stop, they must be stopped. Papers were filed, speeches made, concerns raised, but the horrors continued. At any point in the past 78 years, the UN could have circled back to its initial creation of Israel and taken actual steps to combat it, but it never did. And on Monday, November 17th, the UN Security Council voted unanimously, with China and Russia abstaining, to accept the U.S. plan for Gaza, which is nothing short of continued ethnic cleansing and essentially a slow-moving genocide. Palestinians were not included in the vote because they never are. With this decision, the UN once again showed its foundational ideology, its raison d'être. Okay, if colonialism is the battering ram for capitalism, then the UN is the sandpaper, ensuring those being bludgeoned to death don't get any splinters. For instance, it's worth noting that while the U.S. has a seat at the UN, the hundreds of indigenous tribes, even recognized by the U.S. law, do not. Sweden has a seat at the UN, but the Sami, whose ancestral lands negate the borders of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, do not. India has a seat at the UN. Kashmir does not. Indeed, the UN has since 1947, faithful here at that, been discussing and debating what it calls the India-Pakistan question. You'll notice that Kashmir is not even mentioned. And still, no action has been taken with regards to using international pressure on India. The UN is a colonial project built of nation states which ultimately seeks to protect and defend the colonialist structure of the nation state. It created Israel, after all. And while there are, of course, good intentions and righteous people who work within its confines, the problem is, in fact, those confines. It is the global nation-state conglomerate that doesn't just allow for atrocities to take place, but demands it. The creation and upkeep of nation-states must be violent, as it's based on the colonialist framework of othering, bordering, and supremacy, all of which are imposed structures that can only be imposed with violence. The UN was never for the oppressed. It was never going to be an escape hatch for the cyclical violence of nation-state upkeep. It's a part of that violence, even when it attempts to rein it in. It legitimizes that violence by engaging with it as a foregone conclusion of our world, the best we can do, what we've always done. It is therefore also engaged in the violence of abolishing memory, of protecting and uplifting the ways in which we've built and thrived outside of the nation-state paradigm. When it comes to justice and liberation, at best, the UN is useless. At worst, it whitewashes and excuses the true nature and intentions of the colonialist and imperialist network it serves. Man, that is a powerful statement right there. Again, that's not to say that the UN doesn't do good work. It's the charity event in a capitalist framework. Charity events and organizations also have a very clear and positive effect on the people who are deemed worthy enough to receive it. But the framework that charity hides is grotesque, and their cover-up is likewise so. In short, the UN, as part of the architecture of our oppression, will likewise be part of the ashes of the empire if and when we rise from them. And the fire's already burning. As we stare down climate chaos and the continued destabilization of the global nation-state conglomerate, because it's been replaced by the corporate oligarchy state, we will see more and more that the imperial core will dig deeper and deeper to its roots, for it knows only one way to solve problems, and that's through more violence and more oppression. It's therefore vital that we do more than fight, leaning back on our heels. Right? Our goal must be to abolish the entire architecture of this global oppression. This requires understanding of distinct but parallel histories, of so-called modernity, of heritage buried beneath the rubble, and lots of imagination. It requires the solidarity of the shaken, where we with broken hearts and maddened minds confront an unacceptable reality and every day, in small fractured ways, make worlds. We're not alone in this. We have lessons from many people in many places at many times, but we must dig to find them, to find each other, and to never look to those aiding our oppressors for liberation. Some people might even say that would, it's funny. Topher says something about you're really close. They believe that they're important, but in the end, they just like to hear themselves talk. They're representatives of the owner and donor class is what it is they don't make those decisions. The UN is a U.S. appendage, not just a U.S., but a Western civilized appendage. The way that they put the sanctions out to Russia, but won't do anything about Israel, just shows just how toothless that institution is, as toothless as the ICJ, unfortunately. So this one made me think, and I wanted to bring that kind of as a warm-up and something to think about, that while it is Israel, remember that it's every other nation that stands by and voted outside of the Arab nations to allow Israel to exist in the first place, and that continues to acknowledge it as a legitimate nation state that they should continue to do business with and deal with. They shouldn't. Fuck Israel. Fuck the UN. The way that they've been whitewashing and ignoring. Look, they had UNRWA set up and they've bailed. They haven't fought at all to keep their people there. Not hard enough, at least. They haven't gone and lobbied to every nation on the country in the world to say, look at what these people are doing to our innocent people that are there to feed starving people. I don't hear Antonio Guterres doing that at all. I don't know why he's still the Secretary General. Well, because he won't hold them accountable, so he keeps his job. Again, fuck Israel. I've talked about this guy before. Guy Christensen. All right. This is an interesting video that he made, and a short one, detailing that he was a senior in high school when Israel began this genocide. He's now been kicked out of college. Ohio State University. We covered that he was expelled for protesting against the genocide and camping out. He did nothing wrong. He committed no crime.
I was just a senior in high school, 17 years old, when Israel launched their genocide against the Palestinian people. And I knew I had to speak up. That's what I did. And years later, I'm 19, about to turn 20. We've reached hundreds of millions of people with our message of peace and humanity. This year we raised over $500,000 to feed people in Gaza directly on the ground, something we're still doing now. And it feels like I've come almost full circle, because at the end of this month, I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak to high school students about how they can use social media to elevate their voices and make change in this world. And we need more people doing this. We need more activists. We need more people on the ground, more people using their voices online. It's so important. And I mean, to me, I'm just blessed. I'm just very blessed. I don't have to be in Gaza under Israeli occupation, under the boot, under bombs, under starvation. I don't have to be in a prison here in the United States detained for my legal status. I don't have to be in Sudan, who's undergoing another genocide. I'm honored to be blessed to be supported by you guys, to be elevated in the position that you guys put me in, and I'm thankful for it. And I mean, if you want to come see me at the end of this month at the Palestine Convention, you can check out them at palestineconvention.org. It would be nice to meet you guys. Anyways, thank you, and free Palestine.
I think that was earlier this month, and that was in LA. He went and did that. He actually just did a video today on his Instagram about Palestine Cola and about two Palestinian guys that are trying to basically, create a BDS version and send the proceeds and the profits to support Palestinian people. Yeah, I agree. He's even more cool than when I was his age, for sure. He's certainly aware of what the hell's going on and setting himself up to be some kind of a leader. And he's, he can articulate beautifully and really summarize stuff. And again, he connects with people very well. Guy Christensen, your favorite guy, I believe, on Twitter. And if you look him up, you'll find him all over the place. He's on Facebook. Amazingly enough, they tried to kick him off, but he's been reinstated. Vedmore is in Johnny Vedmore, D to T. Yes, it is Johnny Vedmore. We're going to talk about Johnny Vedmore in a little bit. But we're still on our Fuck Israel segment, so we're going to continue that. This one's going to kind of upset some people, and it even upset me, but I have not really seen an article talking about the embarrassment of the Jewish community because of what Israel is perpetrating. And while this is from somebody who is with, if not now, Boston, I believe is the organization she represents, and some of the things she says I completely disagree with. I, again, wanted to bring this because she articulates some of the things about dealing with family that I've personally had to deal with, and it really hit me. So she writes this article. It says, 2 years after October 7th, where is our movement headed? This is Alyssa Rubin. I've never read Alyssa Rubin before. This came across my feed, and I clicked on it, and I'm like, interesting. The Jewish community is at a crossroads when it comes to Israel's genocide. As organizers, it's our job to bring them along. Can't argue with anything she's saying right there. But we're gonna move on. As the tenuous ceasefire in Israel and Gaza goes into effect, she's brought back to October 7th. That morning, she woke up, checked her phone, and my stomach dropped. Okay, the moment I saw the news about the Hamas attack, I could already see the horror that was about to unfold before us. Less than a week later, I found myself sitting on the floor of Elizabeth Warren's office as Israel ordered the entire population of northern Gaza, 1 million people, to evacuate within 24 hours. In Boston, it was almost sundown on the first Shabbat since October 7th. We sat there singing songs about peace that we learned in Hebrew school, sharing stories of grandparents who survived the Holocaust, and crying out for our progressive Massachusetts senator to use her power to push for a ceasefire. Yeah, good luck with that. As we sat there, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. It was my grandpa, calling to wish me a Shabbat Shalom, as he does every Friday. I silenced the call. There were 7 of us in that office. It would be nearly another week before the first member of Congress called for a ceasefire. Day by day, my fear and outrage grew as I watched more members of the Jewish community, including many rabbis and leaders who had recently begun speaking out against the Israeli government, double down in support of Israel's retaliatory assault on Gaza. There was no room to question Israel's increasingly brutal attacks. Never mind the long-term implications of Israel's system of occupation, apartheid, and siege. There was no room to grieve the deaths of the 1,200 Israelis killed on October 7th without our communal and political leaders twisting our grief to justify attacks on Gaza. And certainly there was no room for the humanity of the millions of Palestinians now facing relentless bombing, displacement, hunger, and disease. I told you I didn't agree with everything this article said. To be Jewish and call for a ceasefire in October of 2023 was a profoundly isolating experience that I felt on a deeply personal level. I think Alyssa's a lot more religious and plugged in than I am personally. I didn't feel like it was a profoundly isolating experience. I disagree with that, but that's her opinion and what her lived experience. She said, in the weeks after and months after October 7th, I couldn't bear to talk to my grandpa, one of the people I love and respect most in the world. I couldn't endure hearing Yoav Gallant's threats to annihilate all of Gaza echoed in my grandpa's voice, the voice that sang to me as a baby and led Kiddush at Shabbat dinner every week. The voice that cried out to save my brother from walking into a busy street as a small child. I've never been able to square my grandpa's unconditional love for my brother and me with the violent ideology he supports when it comes to Palestine. This is a real thing that people in the Jewish community are dealing with. Last month, I opened my phone, and this time I saw my rabbi being arrested in Senator John Thune's office alongside dozens of other rabbis calling for food aid to be let into Gaza. I had to check twice to make sure what I was seeing was real. 2 years ago, the majority of the coalition of voices speaking out today against the Israeli government's genocidal actions was defending those very actions. What we're seeing now is an unprecedented communal shift. A new and growing liberal left alliance united against Israel's mass starvation and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza. There is no longer any way for any right-wing Jewish and non-Jewish institutions to claim that the Jewish community stands unequivocally in support of Israel's siege of Gaza, or to simply write off dissidents as irreverent and marginal. Every major Jewish movement in the United States, from the Reform movement to over 80 Orthodox clergy, has now publicly criticized Israel's tactics of mass starvation and indiscriminate killing. That's a bare minimum. But those speaking out are clergy, synagogue members, elected officials, parents, young people, and elders of every race, generation, and denomination and gender. The dam has broken. I don't want to gloss over the very real tensions and misalignments that exist within that coalition. There are plenty, or how much work lies ahead of us to make meaningful political change, because that's not the way to actually do it. There is discomfort with using or not using the word genocide still, different relationships to Zionism, and disagreement with what it looks like to hold the humanity of both Palestinians and Israelis in our messaging. Oh my God. Again, that's liberal nonsense. That's just kowtowing and catering to the liberal bullshit brunch crowd. But holding the humanity of both Palestinians and Israelis means that they both have the right to exist, to live, and to live equally, with equal rights. It's not hard. But the fact that these are the conversations that we're even having reflects an undeniable shift in the center of power of the Jewish community. And I think that that is absolutely a fact. All right? Because it has shifted the narrative. It's even so slightly, but the narrative was get them and, spewing the hasbara of the nonsense. I don't even want to repeat the lies that were perpetrated and still are by the Barry Weisses and plenty. But a lot of people are actually realizing, oh shit, the IDF actually did call for the Hannibal Directive. You mean the Apache helicopters are the ones that actually took out the cars? You mean they actually did pull the people off the wall the morning of October 7th? And that they actually were warned in advance and yeah, all of that. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see the questions asked, and it's way too late. Honestly, I agree. But it's important to acknowledge that a shift in American Jews towards Israel is important, because without American Jewish support, that's why they're going after the Charlie Kirks and the Christian Zionists, because they're losing us. And now they're losing the Christian Zionists too. The Candace Owens, as much as I can't stand her, she's figuring it out. This shift didn't happen because people just woke up one day and decided to act differently. It happened because we, as just one part of the broader movement for Palestinian freedom, have created the conditions for people to move. We've been consistent in our demands from the beginning. Since the day after, on October 8th, 2023, we've demanded a ceasefire, a full hostage exchange, an end to apartheid occupation. And that full hostage exchange is on both sides. That includes the 10,000 plus Palestinians that are sitting in Israeli jails right now, especially the ones that were put there without charge or trial and that sit there indefinitely. People like Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, that's been there just about a fucking year already. Free Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. All right. Full hostage exchange, end to apartheid and occupation, and equality and justice for all Palestinians and Israelis, which means they get a homeland, which means they get right of return. which means they get the right to govern themselves and the right to create a military. That's giving them a country. That's if you want a two-state solution. I believe that's not even possible. I believe Israel cannot exist as a two-state solution. They will not live in harmony with the Palestinian people. They will make sure that it is crushed, and Bibi's already said so multiple times. So therefore, it must be a one-state solution where everybody lives together equally. Alyssa continues, and she says that we brought 2,000 Jews to shut down the White House. We've demanded that our elected officials reject AIPAC money. We knocked on doors in Pittsburgh and St. Louis and Westchester County, New York, to defend some of the only members of Congress who were willing to stand up to AIPAC's genocidal agenda. How'd that work out for them? Not so great. Westchester County was Jamal Bowman. He got primaried out. St. Louis was Cori Bush. She got primaried out. Pittsburgh, I'm not even sure who Pittsburgh was. I think that was when Harris went to Pittsburgh and they protested. We showed up by the thousands when Mahmoud Khalil and Ramesia Ozturk were abducted for their Palestine activism earlier this year by the Trump administration, which we covered extensively on How Do We Miss That? And now it seems that we've achieved some of our basic demands as Israel and Hamas enter into a tenuous, fragile ceasefire. It's not really a ceasefire. Israel's never stopped killing anyone any day. The hostages have been released. No, the Israeli hostages have been released. Some aid is entering Gaza, a woeful, pitiful amount. And for now, the daily onslaught of violence has slowed. Despite the fact that this movement is exactly what we've been fighting for, this victory is painful. The journey to get here has been catastrophic and devastating in ways that are difficult to put into words. In the 2+ years that it's taken to get here, we have not been able to save the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza and hundreds more in the West Bank, including her friend Adwa, a leader from al-Khair, a tiny village in Mosfer Yatta. And what makes this moment even more fraught is that many of the people who are joining our cries for a ceasefire and end to starvation are some of the very people who defended Israel's right to drop bombs and murder entire Palestinian families, who saw images of starving children and placed the blame solely on Hamas and preached unconditional support for Israel from the pulpit, who called us self-hating Jews when we dared to call for a ceasefire. They're the communal and political leaders who could have leveraged their power at any point in the last 2 years to save countless lives. Fuck all of them. There have been many calls for the reckoning that these leaders must undergo if they're to be trusted members of our movements. I agree. No, they're just not to be trusted members of our movements anymore, and we need new leaders, and leaders who won't capitulate and even consider working with people like that anymore. Our people have serious work to do. And I want to talk about the work that we need to do as organizers if we're serious about achieving our goals, because the stakes are unbelievably high. This victory is a significant one, but we have a long, long fight ahead of us. There has been no victory. What you're talking about is a victory in rhetoric where you've moved the goalpost like slightly. People are still getting killed. Israel is still being held without impunity, taking over Syria, taking over Lebanon. All these other things are still going on. You haven't stopped any of it, but you're somehow patting yourself on the back. That bothers me. Right now, we have a critical window of opportunity to translate this massive wave of energy into real political change. It's not a straight shot. Yeah, you could say that for sure. And it's not a guarantee, 100%. But we are closer than we have ever been before to winning an arms embargo. The only real meaningful course of action to end Israel's system of apartheid and occupation and ensure lasting peace. We talked about that story about Rafi UK that got shut down because it was exposed as an intel front a couple of weeks ago. Declassified did a great story about that. For the first time, there's a legislative vehicle in Congress, the Block the Bombs Act, which is H.R. 3565. Of course, that's going to expire in about 4 weeks. and be meaningless, but that had an unprecedented coalition of co-sponsors, including the entire Congressional Progressive Caucus. Bet you didn't know that. Of course, it costs them nothing to do that right now because they know that it won't pass, so they can say that they're for it while knowing it won't pass. Several Jewish representatives. That actually is a risk to them, to their donors, and some representatives who were once backed by AIPAC. 6 in 10 voters oppose the U.S. sending more arms to Israel, yet we're doing it anyway. And the Jewish community is openly grappling with existential questions about our community's historically uncritical support for Israel. Again, conflating Judaism and Israel, by the way, quite a bit here, I notice, and Zionism and it's, again, these are mental gymnastics that people like are going to have to get through. But she's almost there, like Topher said. We have between now and the 2028 presidential election, oh God, to cement support for an arms embargo as the mainstream position in both the Democratic Party and in the U.S. Jewish community. Apparently, she doesn't acknowledge that donors exist and where they support. The former is going to take a strong, multifaceted coalition that can go up against weapons manufacturers, AIPAC, the fossil fuel industry, and the entire military-industrial complex. We have a role to play in that coalition. The role is to be patted on the head and ignored and dismissed. The latter is our responsibility. We have 3 years to organize our synagogues, our cultural organizations, our day schools, our JCCs, our summer camps, and our political organizations that are all funded by Zionists, by the way, into a powerful movement that can say unequivocally and forcefully that Jewish safety and Palestinian safety are intertwined. Well, they are. That we refuse to let one more bomb drop in our name. Again, that's just liberal rhetoric. Liberals love bombs dropping. Sorry, they do. They just don't want to have to look at it or deal with it. That's part of the coalition she's looking to embrace. The Kamala Harrises of the world. Sorry, never going to happen. The support of the Jewish community is not a nice to have. It is essential. Without airtight support from the Jewish community, the political right will continue to capitalize on its extremely effective and cynical strategy of using anti-Semitism to attack, weaken, and criminalize the Palestinian rights movement, a strategy that has serious ramifications for the very foundations of our democracy. They're almost there. Our ability to accomplish this feat hinges on whether we're able to hold together this nation liberal left coalition, which we won't be able to, on whether we'll have the discipline to stay clear-eyed about our goals, and on whether we'll have the heart to love our people that are so deeply in need of a different path forward. Those aren't our people. I'm sorry, they're not. If they're still for genocide 2 years in, they're not our people. Or you got a serious problem. In the days following October 7th, 2023, thousands of Jews gathered across the country for public recitations of the Mourner's Kaddish for Israelis and Palestinians. We mourn the Israelis who were killed or taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th and the Palestinians murdered by indiscriminate Israeli bombs falling on Gaza. Don't both sides this shit. Stop this nonsense. This is unacceptable bullshit. We refused to let our grief for Israeli lives be used to justify the murder of Palestinians. And we also refused to let go of the humanity of Israelis and Jews. You've got to. Sorry, you've got to. They have let go of their humanity by encouraging, voting for, and continuously supporting genocide and land theft in multiple countries and attacking sovereign nations unprovoked. You cannot just whitewash that and mean, well, that's our community. No, fuck that. In the last 2 years, we've held countless political education events and trainings across the country for Jews who are grappling with their relationships to Israel and Zionism. We've built relationships with members of synagogues and other Jewish institutions who feel disappointed, betrayed, or outraged by their spiritual and communal leaders' abdication of responsibility in the face of an ongoing genocide. As well they should be. They had nowhere to go as synagogue members because their leaders were all pro-genocide. If they were questioning it, where did they go? They just stopped going. We've supported people to take serious personal, professional, and physical risks, to speak out, to demand action from our government, our Jewish institutions, and our elected officials. You supported them, but what if, I don't know how much I even encouraged that. Look, it's brave, and I'll stand by you, but understand that is a risk that they're not taking, apparently. This is the work we must recommit to as we face this critical juncture. We must reach the people who aren't yet with us, people who are confused, who are angry, who are starting to open their eyes to the fact that the story they were told, that their safety was dependent on the oppression of Palestinians, was a lie. People just like my grandpa. Let's come back to that. In the past 2 years, she's hardly talked to her grandpa about Palestine. At 93 years old, as a child of poor Eastern European immigrants who grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust and the creation of the State of Israel, I thought he was a lost cause. I had given up on him. But this past summer, I visited him at his assisted living facility. At one point, he abruptly interrupted me in the middle of an unrelated conversation and said, "Children don't look like that after being hungry for a day or even a week." I remember the photos from the Holocaust. That's what those children look like. Something broke in me then. I had never expected him to see what I was seeing. I never expected that his unconditional love would be able to jump the fence of the lie he'd been fed about our safety. Through my tears, I told him about my friend Auda, murdered in cold blood by a settler in the West Bank that very week. I told him about witnessing a home demolition in Masafer Yada in 2019 and about how easily the house collapsed against the bulldozer's claws like a house of cards. I told him about the Palestinian kids I met and their grandmother that reminded me of my grandmother, how they had never seen the sea. I told him how desperately I fight every day for a world where Jewish safety and Palestinian safety are not pitted against each other. He said, "I'm worried about what this means for the future of Judaism. How do we go on?" That is the question. I asked him what it was about Judaism that he wanted to protect. His response: that Jews should care for other human beings as human beings. I took his hand and committed to him that I would fight every day for a Judaism that embodies this belief. And that's the belief that I was raised with. With tears in his eyes, he said, "The only thing that makes this world good is its people. Unfortunately, it's also the only thing that makes it fucking terrible." But yes, none of us showed up to the movement with perfect politics. We showed up knowing that something was deeply wrong in the world and desperate for something to do about it. Through that process, we all underwent our own transformations. In order to win, we have to believe in people's capacity for transformation. I'm having a hard time with it still, even though your 93-year-old grandfather did. I'm not talking about watering down our message so that we appear more palatable or walking back our commitment to telling the truth about the reality of genocide and of decades of apartheid and occupation. I'm talking about being steadfast, both in our politics and how we practice our politics, or lack thereof, because none of the above, motherfuckers. We have to be committed to meeting people where they're at, and we have to refuse to leave them there. No, we have to bring people to where we're at. You have to meet them where they're at so that you can speak to them, but you have to bring them, like she says, you can't leave them there. But you can't stay with them, and you can't meet them on their terms. Because if you meet them on their terms, then they've co-opted you, not the other way around. This is not going to be easy work. Moving people from an understanding that it's wrong to intentionally starve an entire population to concrete action to end this genocide is not a simple journey, even though it totally should be. This is work that involves building real relationships, asking questions, digging deeper, and the gently but firmly pressing people to entertain the possibility that Jews will only ever achieve true safety if Palestinians are also safe and free. Seems obvious to me. It's going to involve asking people to face their fears and push through to the other side. And stop listening to the fear-mongering douchebags that are profiting from this. It's going to involve holding people in their shame and despair when they realize the full extent of the catastrophe that our community and our country has enabled for not just the past 2 years, but the past 77. It's going to require looking at our own messy politics, the places where we still have more to learn and unlearn as we accompany others on their journeys. It sounds like she's still got a lot more to unlearn, though she's been there. She's actually made the attempt to sit down in Gaza and in the West Bank and learn directly from the people who live it. We have the tools to do this work. Over the last decade, community-based Jewish organizing groups, including her organizing home, if not now, have been running training programs that have been transformational for thousands of people. As a participant and facilitator in these programs, she's seen it happen. She's watched people of all ages have told each other, as they've told each other, stories of their ancestors' fights for survival, of their experience of indoctrination in Jewish institutions, of the movements of rupture in their families and communities. I've cried alongside new friends and comrades as we grieve the way that our people's trauma has been used to justify the oppression, subjugation, and genocide of Palestinians. I've sat with people as they started to see, with fresh eyes, the reality of almost 80 years of apartheid and occupation. And I've asked these people to take action, to do things they've never done before, to sign on to a letter, to speak at a rally, to ask others in their community to join them, to risk arrest, to risk getting fired, and to risk their status in their community. Organizing at its core is about transformation. It is the job of organizers to help people see the world in a new way and realize their own power. And when that personal transformation happens on a collective level, we unleash the power to transform society. This is as much a spiritual project as it is a political one. I think that's a little holdy-handy, hopey-changey kumbaya. But again, remember, she's still pretty liberal. She says we're up against forces who are looking to exploit every opportunity they can find to fracture this movement, and we don't need to give them any more opportunities to do so. We owe it to ourselves and the movement we're building, to the growing movement of Israelis who are taking immense risk to resist their government's tyrannical policies, though there aren't nearly enough of them, to the precious souls who've been murdered by the Israeli apartheid regime. And most importantly, to the Palestinians who continue to resist the daily horrors of the genocide, to do everything we possibly can to help to build the movement that we need to win, whatever winning is. And again, I think defining a win even is something that we would all have to argue over. I feel like this is doing mental gymnastics to justify some stuff, but I specifically wanted to talk about the thing with the grandfather, and because it's very personal to me too. I struggle with it. I have a father, I've been pretty open, who's a Zionist, and he and I are still very close, and we go back and forth and back and forth. And I won't stop trying to change his mind and trying to scream at him about how wrong this all is, because this is the guy who put the values in me to know that this was wrong. So how can he not see it? And I'm not going to stop trying to convince him. And usually what he ends up doing is throwing his hands up and saying, I don't want to discuss this anymore, because he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't have a response. He doesn't have any kind of justification other than to say, I want to, like it's that childish, and then all the Hasbara, the narrative, but he doesn't even bother with the October, he does try to reference October 7th, and I keep reminding him, it's not about October 7th. Okay. It's about so much more than that. And it's about holding these people in humanity. Why do you think they would even want to rebel or have a prison break on October 7th? And let's call it the prison break that it actually is, and not call it the worst terrorist attack in the history of the country, or whatever you want to call it, where they allowed it to happen, where they called in the Hannibal Directive, where Israel murdered its own citizens to do that. All right. And to not even acknowledge it is gross. So I continue to fight daily. And whenever we see each other, we have pleasant conversations, but it will inevitably at some point come down to corruption, control of narrative, and Israel-Palestine, and the way that Israel is trying to own all of the media entities like Paramount and Skydance, buying now TikTok, and now making a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. Again, that would give them the power to control a narrative across a massive amount of platforms that have tens of millions of viewers. It's something that I'm grappling with, and I'm not going to cut off my family. Although a lot of people have cut off family members that can't see it and that don't even want to discuss it. I refuse to do it, and I will keep trying to make that happen. And I'm not going to, and I don't want to deprive my kids their grandparents, for example. And there are those kinds of considerations. So fuck Israel for all of that, and for even having that level of mental gymnastics so that you have to kind of bridge a gap between people who are advocating for genocide, who are in your family, and you who knows that genocide is wrong and is completely against that, but don't want to completely cancel out your family. How do you manage to live alongside that? It's incredibly difficult and frustrating, and in some cases heartbreaking, because the disappointment in people that you thought believed a certain thing that doesn't exist, that is a hard reality to deal with. But I still have more in fuck Israel, by the way. Jonathan Cook, this is a long one, so I'm just going to show you the headline, and I'm going to graze over it quickly because, again, this is very long. This is another one. Trump is turning Gaza into a brutal colonial protection racket. Going back to Eleanor's article about the Gaza peace plan that was signed off on by the UN unanimously with the abstentions of China and Russia. Cook says, and Cook, by the way, is an Indie Media Award honoree from First Class 2022. Trump is turning Gaza into a brutal colonial protection racket. Trump's peace plan will never be meaningfully realized and was never intended to be. It's simply a way of prolonging Gaza's living hell. All right. And he talks about how, the president will be able to dictate the fate of Gaza's people with a simple gesture. Whatever he decides, whether the thumb up turns up or down, it will be called peace, like a Roman emperor. Reminds me of the scene in Gladiator with Joaquin Phoenix with the thumbs up. I think it's thumbs up. Trump's most likely sidekick in this depraved charade will be Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. Now, remember, Jonathan is British, so he's coming from a British perspective. Tony won his war crime spurs more than 20 years ago when he joined one of Trump's predecessors, George W. Bush, in launching an illegal invasion of Iraq and a subsequent catastrophic occupation that left that country in ruins too. Satire cannot do justice to this movement. All right. They're talking about how this is a joint U.S.-Israeli occupation, and part of it is in Disarming Hamas. Last year, the ICJ ruled that Israel must end its occupation and pull out of all Palestinian territories as rapidly as possible, including Gaza. We can see that they have done the exact opposite and have taken more than 50% of the country, making the territory, making it a yellow zone that any Palestinian that enters will be shot on sight. In supporting UN Resolution 2308, both have, entirely predictably, reneged on that promise. Although at the insistence of Arab states, the resolution makes a vague nod to a possible pathway to statehood, the Board of Peace, that is the U.S. and Israel, gets to decide when or if that actually happens. The worst part is that a precondition is that Mahmoud Abbas's supine Palestinian Authority submits to an undefined reform program. What has that got to do with Gaza? The Palestinian Authority already serves as Israel's reliable security subcontractor in the occupied West Bank, having turned itself into a modern-day Vichy regime. And again, there's a lot more there, talking about the ties to criminal gangs and how Israel has been supporting the criminal gangs in order to loot the aid, and then claim that it is Palestinians that are doing it, not Israeli-supported Palestinians, but Palestinians doing it to themselves so that then they can justify blocking more aid. Okay? Then you again have the behind-the-curtain section, all right, where hand-picked members of the media were given a peek behind the curtain to see who'll be running Gaza. We knew that 18 months ago. We covered the Gaza 2035 plan, that it was going to be a coalition. All right. But now we have actual names. All right. New Civil Military Coordination Center is filled with Israeli, U.S., and European military officials, Arab intelligence agents, diplomats, and aid workers. There was, the paper noted, no one representing Palestinian interests, because there never is. The same building was used earlier to house the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Reminder, the U.S. and Israeli-backed mercenary group that pretended to be an aid agency until it was wound up last month when they first announced a ceasefire. But that agency had whistleblowers that were saying that they were murdering Palestinians as well, and working alongside the IDF to murder innocent children that were scrambling for aid. But again, we have a name. The new center is led by Arya Lightstone, who served in Trump's first term under the then U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, an outspoken pro-Israel zealot whose main mission was to get the U.S. embassy moved, in violation of international law, to the Israeli-occupied city of Jerusalem. They did that. Lightstone is likely to emerge as the new Paul Bremer, a hugely unqualified U.S.-appointed governor of Iraq following the illegal 2003 invasion. Bremer, at the time, if you remember, gutted what was left of Iraqi national institutions and civil society after a U.S. shock and awe bombing campaign. Does that sound familiar? The resulting lawlessness made the Iraqi population prey to sectarian death squads, while U.S. firms sought to plunder Iraq's wealth, and did. All right? And there's a lot more here, like I said. Again, nowhere safe, and that's for the Palestinian people to go. All right? The U.S. has decided to only rebuild in the green zone, the section of Gaza under Israeli control. The red zone is to be left in ruins for the time being, because they're not allowing heavy equipment to come in to bulldoze and to set it up, or the Palestinians to go in and rebuild it for themselves. A U.S. official told the paper of the Gaza plan, ideally, you would want to make it all whole, right? But that's aspirational. They're already admitting that they're never going to fix it. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be easy. Ask the residents of New Orleans that were displaced because of Katrina how their stuff's going, because there's places that never came back 20 years later. Oh, and we're okay, good. We're holding. All right, living hell. The reality, however, is that Trump's peace plan is never going to be meaningfully realized, and it's not intended to be. Gaza was already one of the most densely populated places on Earth. How its starving population of 2 million or so to be crammed in half the space with no homes and all its hospitals and schools either bombed into rubble or out of reach? In truth, this is simply a way of just to justify prolonging a living hell for Gaza's population under the cover of a peace plan, while they desperately try to get another country to be willing to take these people in. But to do that would also be to admit and to concede that Israel is then going to be taking that land and that they're okay with that, which I don't think any country is doing. Israel had exhausted world sympathy to the point where Western leaders' complicity in the genocide had become too visible to conceal. I saw that France actually was like doing something pretty big recently. I'm going to cover that probably next time. Now, rather than having military officials on air spouting self-evident lies about only targeting Hamas fighters, we'll have U.S. officials explaining, with the help of far more savvy public relations teams, how they're struggling under insuperable odds to improve the situation of Palestinians. Anyone refused entry into the green zone will be presented as Hamas or an ally of Hamas. Families in the red zone killed with U.S. supplied bombs will be terrorists by definition. The new barbarians at the gate. It's all propaganda. The Western media will finally be placated as its genocide complicit correspondents are ushered into Gaza, but only into the green zone. There, they'll be guided around model safe communities where they can busy themselves airing footage of afflicted Palestinians fleeing Hamas and offered respite in new settler areas, this green zone. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Palestinians will struggle to survive the winter without shelter and significant aid, with no hospitals and no schools for their children, all while being indiscriminately bombed by Israel. This is the only peace, quote unquote, that Trump is offering. And again, fuck Israel, fuck Trump, fuck Tony Blair in the UK, and everyone who's going along with this. Shout out to Jonathan K. Cook. I also wanted to make mention about Miss Rachel. I brought this stand-up comedian. This guy made a funny about the whole Miss Rachel thing, but also pointed out something that I wanted people to hear. So let's watch this quick.
Miss Rachel she's a children's phonetic presenter on YouTube, and she got into some trouble in July because she said, "I don't think we should kill children." That's what she said. And the US media was like, "What the fuck is that supposed to mean? What the fuck are you trying to say?" And so they put her on the news. And I swear to God, you can go back and you watch the interview. The journalist interviewing her says this to her. They say, "Are you in Hamas?" They asked Miss Rachel, who wears overalls and a pink shirt with matching headband every day of her life. They said, "Are you in Hamas?" And I really like to think about that. I like to think about Miss Rachel getting into Hamas. I like to track that. I like to do the forensics on that. She's probably worth $500 million. Lives in New York, has only worked in speech therapy for children, and then now she's a YouTube presenter, brand deals across the globe. Did they DM her? Is that what they did? They DM'd her? She went to hidden messages, she opened that up, she says, "Oh shit, it's Hamas." They said, "We're big fans, we really love what you do. Have you thought about Islamic resistance at all?" And she said, "You know what, I have always been interested in Sharia law. I have." The funny thing is what I like about Miss Rachel is she's uncancelable because the kids like her too much. And if you have kids, you know that if there's something that will occupy your children, poor use of words in this joke, but if something will control your daughter's movement for like 3 minutes, it's invaluable. So I mean, honestly, I could turn on Miss Rachel and she could have that green headband on and she could be yelling in Arabic. And I'd be like, let her watch for a little bit, just let her watch for a couple minutes, you know. Put on your scarf, baby, put on your headscarf. You know it's haram not to wear it right now, okay? Mashallah, this is a good show. Alhamdulillah. If you guys don't know who Ms. Rachel is, she's a children's phonetic.
Just a little lighthearted comedy about how ridiculous it is that Israel is trying to cancel Miss Rachel. She's Hamas. That's right. We're all Hamas. I also wanted to point out at the end of this that there was a war criminal dinner party protest seen in Union Station last week. And this was beautifully done. So Village Crazy Lady Mel, I saw this from Eitan Fishburger. Check this out. The masks were amazing. So you've got Pence and Blinken, Trump, Netanyahu, and then Marco Rubio. And there's blood on the table, and there's baby parts, you know, baby doll parts. What happened? Well, I guess the sound ended. All right, they had a whole menu on the table for their formal fancy dinner party. All right, this is them getting in trouble for setting it off. So they had to pack it up and move outside. Okay, and while they were going either to or from the station.
Oh, going on a nice walk with my dog.
Well, that was Joe Biden, not Mike Pence, sorry.
Yeah, be a good boy for BB.
Come on. I mean, that's amazing. Dog biscuits and genocide.
Good boys, good boys. Who's BB's best lab dog?
I don't know, I think they all qualified pretty well. But I would say it's Donnie.
You know?
Because he's also subservient to Mary Manson.
What a funny joke. Good doggy, good doggy.
So this was them walking to Union Station to the dinner party.
We're together for almost 2 years. Yeah. Good boy. Yeah, you gave me everything I wanted. No pushback whatsoever.
BB's lapdogs. There they
The
are.
best of the best. I'm the best at serving the master.
And of course, lapdogs need dog tags, which is why they're all wearing dog tags.
Good boys.
Amazing. But that wasn't enough because they also went outside after they got kicked out.
Good boy. Good boy. Loyal lapdog. Thank you. You said yes to everything we asked.
Dude.
Friends in genocide.
It's the Israeli Thanksgiving dinner.
We love Trump and Israel. We love right-wing fascism.
shout out to whoever had the balls to do this, because they definitely risk getting themselves arrested for doing it. Even though this technically is an expression of free speech, I don't know if they got permits, for example, and...
You guys serve us. America first? What a joke. You guys serve me. Right, Mr. Trump? America first, right?
They needed to make the mouths move on the masks.
Yeah.
It really is art, KYE. I agree. That is performance art.
I know you love to share.
Where can we get those masks? That's a great question.
More blood, yes.
More blood. Oh my God.
It's a genocide. Genocide started in 2023.
How different is that from the state dinner where Mohammed bin Salman was there? Did they toast to genocide too?
New genocide in 2026. Thank you, America, for all your taxes. We love you.
Woo. Fuck Israel. So, just a little funnies and a little bit of, I wouldn't even say poking fun at. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs that this is actually more close to what reality is than anything. But like I said, fuck Israel. So, wow, damn, that was a long fuck Israel segment. I have a ton of stuff still to cover. So I hope you're buckled up, because we're going to be here a while. If you're able to, it means certainly YouTube doesn't like when we post stuff like that. So support independent media and support the media you want to see. The people on that board have already done so. That's our wall of fame. The ways to do that are by Cash App, $, Indie News Network. There's no fees there. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Then we got paypal.me/Indie News Network. We're live over at IndieNewsNow.com. That's the name of the show, but it's also a website where you can get news and watch all of INN's shows live. There's also links to merch and support with Stripe there and learn more about the shows on the network. And then there's the Substacks, INN newsletter. We're dropping frames. INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live right now. And hopefully we're going to stop dropping frames, because my internet connection sometimes can be a little squirrely. So I know they don't like when I talk about Israel, so we're done talking about Israel, all right? But we have a lot more to get to, and now we're going to get into some of the ICE stuff that's going on. And again, this is also going to take a little bit. But Adam Klasfeld over at All Rise has been tracking and following the Kimar Abrego Garcia case. And we mentioned, I think, last week, Kimar, because there was a prison in Pennsylvania where all of a sudden he turned up. But they continue to try to deport this guy and send him to Africa, even though he's from, I think, El Salvador. Judge doubts Kimar Abrego Garcia has a final deportation order. The government's fourth attempt to whisk Abrego into a faraway African nation seems bound to flop, and hopefully it will. All right. The Trump admin's fourth effort to deport Kimar Abrego Garcia to a faraway African nation hit a basic stumbling block on Thursday. That was last week. During an evidentiary hearing, a federal judge could not confirm that the government obtained a final order of removal. Quote, if Your Honor finds that there's no removal order, then there's no basis for immigration detention whatsoever, is what his attorney said. They're trying to get this guy out. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes grilled Senior Justice Department lawyer Drew Ensign on the matter. Ensign cited a document in the record, but Zinnes told him that the file had no indication that it ordered Abrego's removal. Well, not in so many words, Your Honor. Not at all, is what the judge said. Ensign said that an immigration judge meant to order Abrego's removal. Well, whatever the judge meant, she said, this doesn't look anything like a removal order. It's not even close. The Supreme Court precedent of a Zadivas v. Davis bars indefinite immigration detention, generally imposing a 90-day limit after a final order of removal, subject to certain exceptions. It's a key precedent that Abrego's lawyers argue for his release. All right. In the words of one of Abrego's lawyers in court, quote, it's been quite a journey. I would say so. This past March, remember, this has been going on 7 months, 8 months. Trump's Department of Homeland Security hustled Abrego out of the country to CCOT to a brutal terrorism prison in El Salvador, where a court order blocked his removal. After 5 court orders demanding his return, the government returned him to the United States for prosecution on allegations that he smuggled immigrants in 2022, which he didn't, has come out multiple times that that's nonsense. Once Abrego won the right to pretrial release, the government offered him a plea deal that would end his deportation to Costa Rica. It would end his deportation to Costa Rica. Prosecutors reneged on that offer once he decided to defend himself at trial. Immigration authorities put him in detention immediately following his release and have fought for months to avoid a trial by entirely deporting Abrego to a series of African countries: Uganda, Eswatini, which half of you don't even know exist, Ghana, and finally Liberia. Liberia, there's a civil war happening. The first 3 countries publicly refused to accept Abrego, who has no ties to any of those nations. Liberia, a country with a blotted human rights record, agreed to accept him. After his initial rejection of the plea offer, Abrego agreed to be deported to Costa Rica, which promised to respect his human rights and not send him back to El Salvador. That's literally all they're asking for at this point. Don't send him to prison for life for not... Again, this guy's not guilty. He didn't do anything. The government has since refused to honor that request. Of course they are, because they're douchebags, insisting upon other countries where Abrego says he fears persecution. The judge, Zinnes, confirmed that the option remains on the table. Quote, if the government wants moot, Abrego is still willing to go to Costa Rica. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. He's still willing to go. So the Trump administration can be rid of him, but that's not enough. They want to disappear him to a country where it's guaranteed that he's going to end up dead. They're essentially sentencing him to death. They're sending him to a country where he has no links, no ties, doesn't speak the language. At least he speaks Spanish. In Costa Rica, he can get by. Send him to Liberia? How the fuck's he going to communicate? Early in the hearing, senior immigration and customs enforcement official John Edward Cantu testified that a State Department lawyer wrote a paragraph of his declaration. Cantu, the acting assistant director for ICE's removal division, added that he didn't understand certain words the lawyer used. Really? Zinnes appeared taken aback by the revelation, and she ordered the unsealing of his declaration, which is not currently public. Why? Cantu had been called in part to assess that Costa Rica is no longer available as an option. But Zinnes said that his actual testimony didn't support that. These people have no fucking idea what they're doing. This witness has said nothing today, she said. Ensign argued that Abrego's willingness to accept Costa Rica shows that he has an order of removal. What? Not necessarily. It's a concession because he's been to CCOT and back. You're dealt a hand and you play it the best you can, she said. If she finds there is no final deportation order, she says she believes we're done. Abrego's lawyers have asked the judge to release their client from immigration custody or, short of that relief, keep an injunction in place blocking his deportation until the government can meet the lawful requirements. Zinnis said she now considers the record closed and will issue a ruling at a later time. If he avoids deportation, which he likely won't, he'll stand trial on January 27th of next year. This is insane. All of this is insane. Yeah, why is Kimar the only one being publicized from all of this? He's not the only one that they are sending to these countries. They've sent hundreds of people there already. Filled up plane loads of them. Yes, totally agree. All right, fuck ICE for this. Like, this is Homeland Security, ICE, Stephen Miller, the Trump administration, a concerted effort. Because they were embarrassed that they couldn't disappear this guy. And that Chris Van Hollen went and got this guy out of CCOT. And it got national attention. Bring him home, as that shirt says. Bring Kimar home. But where is home? Can he really live in Maryland ever again, expecting that he's not going to constantly be persecuted by ICE as long as Trump is president and there's a Republican in the White House? But it doesn't stop there. I've been angry about this situation. I haven't talked about it, but I've been following it closely. Last summer, I showed a video of this man passionately spitting and screaming at his Muslim brother about how could you do the mental gymnastics to vote for Harris when she signed off on everything, and how could you possibly support Trump when he promises to do the same? And it was an incredible 5 or 6 minutes I remember watching with Reef, and I was in tears watching him. He came to the United States to do a speaking tour, and he got arrested by ICE, and they locked him up for 2 fucking weeks. Sami Hamdi is his name. All right, he says, Kevin Gostola, Indie Media Award honoree, interviews him, all right, and says, and his quote is, "My voice was powerful enough that they couldn't leave me alone. They had to put me in detention for 2 weeks." Right? He went on CNN. He did the Breaking Points tour. He did the corporate media tour because corporate media got wind of his story and publicized it. Let me make this a little bigger. This is, by the way, in The Dissenter. I am a big fan of The Dissenter. I am an annual paid subscriber to The Dissenter. Kevin was one of the best journalists went out there when it came to covering the Julian Assange trial. Tremendous amount of respect for him. And since Julian has gotten out, he has stayed on journalists being persecuted by governments. And I really deeply respect that. So his article reads, British journalist Sami Hamdi, who was recently released from ICE detention in the United States, once he agreed to leave, recounted what he experienced during an online discussion organized by the Freedom of the Press Foundation, which I have my own issues with. Hamdi had a valid visa and a ticket for a domestic flight to Tampa, Florida, when he was scheduled to speak at a banquet for CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. Yet, as a result of pressure from anti-Muslim activists, Laura Boomer and Amy Meck, it's actually Laura Loomer, that's funny, the State Department revoked his visa and he was held in confinement for around 18 days. That almost reminds me of the story about the German travelers, but they didn't revoke their visas. They just didn't have places to stay for the entire time they were here. Sami did. On October 26th, DHS took him into custody at the San Francisco International Airport. His detention and removal was in retaliation for his speech in support of Palestinian human rights and against the Israeli government's genocide in Gaza. While searching for the gate for his departure, and after he went through airport security, by the way, according to Hamdi, an agent waiting for him said, "Your visa was revoked 2 days ago, and now you're here illegally." No one had informed Hamdi that his visa was no longer valid, so he demanded proof of this allegation. The agent pulled out a State Department memo, and Hamdi noticed that the document contained no charge or reason for detaining him. It simply commanded that he be arrested or detained by officers. Hamdi asked if he could buy a ticket to London and leave the country, but the agent said, "That's not how this works." Then 5 agents appeared around him. They escorted me out of the airport, and I find a black car with tinted windows waiting for me. They said to me, "Sir, please get in the car." And I said to him, "This feels like a movie. I've seen this, where you throw somebody in the car, etc. I'm a British citizen with rights. I'm not getting into that car. I want to use my phone, call a lawyer, call someone who can advise on my rights and what to do in this situation." Only one problem. He was granted 1 minute. So he called CARE, and they said to find out where you're going, and the agents wouldn't tell him. After asking if he could also contact his family, an agent grabbed Hamdi and threw him on a car. They handcuffed his hands behind his back really tightly. He was thrown in the car and driven half an hour to an ICE processing center. Now remember, they're not jails, they're processing centers. That's what Alligator Alcatraz technically was too. Agents, as Hamdi recalled, put him in a cell. He waited 2 hours until they came and handed him a piece of paper that said he was guilty of what he was charged with doing and that he agreed to the deportation order. What? Of course, Hamdi refused to sign the order because he had a B1, B2 visa that permitted him to visit the U.S. for 6 months a year, and it was valid until 2028. When Hamdi would not agree to his removal, agents took him to the back of a van. And this is wild. I mean, I expect it maybe in Tunisia, where my father's from, but in America, this was a very surreal experience. In the van, Hamdi sat with cuffs on his hands and legs and a chain around his body. Nobody would tell him where the agents were taking him. The trip took 4 to 5 hours, and he was unloaded from the van and put into a black car at one point. Hamdi was brought inside an ICE detention center in McFarland, California, commonly referred to as the Golden State Annex. He watched an agent during check-in ask a Latino man about his country of origin. The man jokingly replied Afghanistan, which led the officer to say, "Your people want to kill my people." The Latino man looked terrified, and immediately he regretted the poor joke. The officer's comment was an insight into the mentality of the people guarding detainees. Don't fuck around, don't joke around. They have no sense of humor. Hamdi recalled being brought to a hall with nearly 100 people that was clearly overcrowded. He was granted 5 minutes to make calls to his lawyers and family. Soon after, he had a meal too. Sweet corn with black spots on it and beans that tasted like they were past expiration. Gross. During detention, there was a period where he felt agonizing pain. He asked for medical treatment, yet hours went by without any doctor visiting him. A guard then told him that the doctor had been around for the past 3 hours. In order to see the doctor, the guard suggested that he drop on the floor right now, otherwise they wouldn't agree to see him. Hamdi also recounted how he was told that ICE would be taking him to Fresno. The fear was that he would be flown to Texas or Florida. Again, he was cuffed tightly and transported to this facility. Why are they moving people around? How is that cost effective at all? 15 people in a small cell were handed yoga mats for sleeping. Ever been on a yoga mat? It's literally like this tiny thin piece of foam. The officers would not remove the cuffs. They're in the fucking cells. "I'm going blue," he told the guards the following morning. They dismissed his complaint. In Fresno, he was informed that his court date on November 6th was pushed back to November 10th. They changed case details, like where he landed. They said he landed in Santa Ana, not San Francisco, and where he was cleared for U.S. entry, Calgary, not true. That allowed them to delay his access to a judge. Okay. By the way, would you like to sign the deportation order and go home right now? Hamdi said he was held in detention in Fresno until 10 p.m. when agents transported him back to the Golden State Annex. Upon return, the warden recognized him as the famous guy. He actually felt that his treatment slightly improved due to media attention. That's scary. The panel discussion additionally focused on the case of Yaakub Ira Viandre, a community journalist and DACA recipient who was detained outside of his home in Texas. Similarly, he was targeted by authorities for his social media postings that covered pro-Palestinian protests. Fuck Israel for that. Sumaya Hamdi, the wife of Sami, spoke about the scary allegations that were made against her husband. The silver lining was that there was an incredible outpouring of support globally from the community, Muslims and non-Muslims, journalists and non-journalists, social media influencers, the legal team, etc. She experienced firsthand the exploitative nature of her husband's detention, too. Not only did they attempt to silence him while in custody, it felt like they were trying to make as much money off this injustice as possible through ice tablets, and then the food and drink vending machines that only took quarters. Sami could only purchase food and drinks when he saw visitors. However, he wasn't allowed to take anything he bought in the facility back to where he was confined, so he had to eat it all there. While discussing the free speech implications, CARE attorney Hassan Ahmed said the U.S. government was taking a shredder to the First Amendment. Civil rights attorney Chris Goodshaw Bennett contended that when the government detains you because of your speech in order to prevent you from speaking again, that strikes me as the most extreme form of prior restraint that could possibly exist. Keep in mind that most ICE detainees do not have the ability to fight this unjust treatment like Hamdi did. But Hamdi had the courage to very publicly challenge ICE in order to further expose their actions. Mariam Udine, the legal director of the Muslim Legal Fund of America, said that Hamdi's whole risk calculus was, if I stay in custody, how much more maximized opportunity is there to do good? He spoke with pride. I hurt the oppressor. I made it so the oppressor had to detain me for 2 weeks. My voice was powerful enough that they couldn't leave me alone. They had to put me in detention for 2 weeks. And even better than that, everybody came out, which meant they couldn't keep me in detention. There's nothing more fun in this job than making the oppressor lose sleep, he said. There's nothing more fun in this job than knowing that you have the ability to make a difference. And that's one way of looking at it. In a show of solidarity with those less powerful to mobilize opposition, Hamdi shared stories about detainees or asylum seekers that he met in custody. They've either had their court dates pushed back or they've not been released because the government can't find a third country to take them. Hamdi insisted that more focus be put on the conditions of detention than just the people who were detained. I will credit Dissent in Bloom for doing that quite a bit also. It's such a tragic injustice what ICE are doing to these people, he concluded. And I think the reality is that ICE officers know it. All it takes is for a concerted effort to put a spotlight on that. And my dream is that it gets dismantled for the atrocities that they're committing in these facilities. And they're prosecuted. They should be prosecuted. Right? There's a link to listen to the panel discussion there. And I brought another Kevin article that came out yesterday, but I'm not going to read through the whole thing because, again, I still have a bunch more stuff. But further targeting mouthpieces and voices who are questioning both Israel's narrative, but also what ICE is doing. Yaakub Viandre, like he had talked about, all right, is another journalist that they're trying to now deport. Right? They're trying to terminate his DACA status. Filipino-American journalist was allegedly targeted by the FBI in retaliation for his refusal to become an informant. The FBI reviewed his immigration record and social media posts, then recommended that immigration services terminate his DACA status, according to his attorneys. Viandre is currently detained at a for-profit ICE detention center in Folkestone, Georgia, operated by Geo Group. He was arrested at gunpoint outside his home in Arlington, Texas on October 7th, 2025. And there are so many stories like this. These are just the ones we hear about. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services pointed to his reporting on pro-Palestinian protests, fuck Israel, and various cases in the global war on terrorism to justify their actions. And an immigration judge accepted that Viandre, a practicing Muslim, could be detained for engaging in First Amendment protected speech. Why? Insane. All right, then talking about this panel discussion, it also featured Viandre's colleague Sam Judy, a freelance journalist and attorneys who represent him. Okay. So further read this article. It's insane. The way that they are targeting anybody who is speaking out against their persecutions is alarming. So we need to support independent journalists like Kevin Gosztola that are defending them and that are shouting these things out. Indie Media Award honorees. We need people like that. So, again, fuck ICE and DHS and fuck Israel. Because remember, this is all being done because this is all reporting on Israel's war crimes. And all these people are being locked up for reporting on Israel's war crimes. It's absolutely insane. It really is. All right. Well, we, again, won't be remonetized by YouTube for reporting stories like that on the INN channel. So if you're able to and of means, please support our channels by doing it directly, either through Cash App by using $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We got paypal.me/Indie News Network. At IndieNewsNow.com, again, the name of the show, but also a website where you can get current news and watch the show live and get linked to pick up merch, INN merch. Christmas is coming up soon. We'll show the merch later. And then also at Substack, INNnewsletter.com, we publish a weekly update. And at IndieMediaToday.com, we're live over there right now. Greetings to the Talking Wombat, my buddy over there who's hanging out. Thank you for telling me about the audio. I moved the mic a little closer. Hopefully that's better. But, man, it's just that so much of our narrative and what we are subjected to is as a result of covering up for what Israel's doing, for Israel's war crimes, silencing people trying to talk about Israel's war crimes. And here's another one, another situation, very similar. Another independent journalist, and we've talked about him before, and we've talked about his silencing before by outlets and by platforms, Johnny Vedmore. Johnny Vedmore is an outstanding researcher. He's done a tremendous amount of work on the Epstein files and to expose, long before Trump ever came into office, a lot of what Epstein was doing. He and Whitney Webb worked together for quite a while as well. He reached out to me, and he and I have DM'd in the past. Originally, it was that he got censored over this Nicole Junkerman. He had done a series, and they were taken down from Rumble, of all places, which was weird. All right. But not just there, but now Substack is even now listening to takedown requests. So this starts out, and this is a long post. Nicole Junkerman denies her provable links with Epstein and Ehud Barak and Peter Thiel. But somehow the censorship campaign continues. Why? Because it's all on behalf of Israel. Fuck Israel. And it seems that she's now lost touch with reality, which isn't a surprise because she's protected. Last week, Substack returned the 4 posts it removed on behalf of Nicole Junkerman's NJF Capital. However, soon after, they informed me that they geo-blocked 6 of my Junkerman-related posts in Germany. The platform didn't inform me straight away. Instead, they only emailed me after I made public posts asking why they hadn't informed me of the geo-blocks. The email notification that Substack sent me proved that it performed zero due diligence. It's a bot system. The Substack team didn't even check the articles to see if any of the claims were true, which was something that I experienced during the prior round of censorship too. By not performing any legal due diligence, Substack are allowing Nicole Junkerman's people to use strategic litigation against public participation, which is SLAP, tactics to silence my journalism. This constant abuse and harassment leveled at public interest journalism should not be acceptable on any platform, let alone a platform for journalists. What are we doing, Substack? By documenting my ongoing legal battle against censorship, I hope to help create a fairer platform where journalism is protected, rather than what we have now, an unaccountable way for the wealthiest in society to target journalism. Johnny needs your help in this. Support his work and fuel his ongoing fight against censorship. Okay, so this was the letter that he had originally gotten. We're reaching out to let you know that we've received a legal complaint regarding alleged defamation of Nicole Junkerman in your following posts. So they're using lawfare to get these posts taken down. Copyright claims and, the defamation of character. So what they're saying is that based on legal advice, they limited the accessibility of these specific posts in Germany, where such content has been determined likely to violate applicable defamation laws. Laws are different in every country. When the 4 articles, which were removed by Substack after a false DMCA and defamation complaint from Michael Oakes of NJF Capital, I was forced to make a similar response. However, Substack clearly did no due diligence. In fact, links to the majority of the accusations Substack wants me to prove to be true are already included in the article. However, her defense is totally detached from reality. She denies being part of Carbine 911 and denies ever being associated with Jeffrey Epstein, Ehud Barak, Pinchas Bukris, or Peter Thiel, even though their associations are on public record. Not only are Nicole Junkerman's associations with Epstein and Carbine 9/11 on the public record, direct communications between Junkerman, Epstein, and Barak have been made available via the Epstein files. Still, it seems that Substack does no due diligence at all and doesn't even check on the claims made by Junkerman's people. His response was comprehensive. All right, and Johnny writes a long-winded response here, right, explaining exactly what they're doing. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to link you to it so you can go read the whole thing. You see, we're still going. Okay. How they're smearing him. All right. Evidence of slap tactics aimed at my public interest journalism. This is a list of her acts of systematic censorship on other platforms. So he then documents going back to as far as 2019, where she is petitioning to have any post written about her that he makes exposing her relationships, including one that from How Do We Miss That, right, where I got geo-blocked referencing the second article about it, right? This has been happening repeatedly, consistently for years. All right, that her tactics fall into 2 primary categories, defamation and strategic litigation, both leveraged to suppress scrutiny of her Epstein ties, documented in the flight logs for 3 trips, including Paris to Birmingham. So he addresses each one of those things. She denies that these things exist. Check it out for yourself. Substack has allowed itself to be a tool of slap tactics because they don't check any of the claims and instead removes content without any evidence. It allows slap tactics to continue. However, one of the most surprising aspects of this case is how brazenly her people lie about her well-recorded involvement with Peter Thiel, Ehud Barak, Pinchas Bukris, and Jeffrey Epstein. All right, so that's what's happening here, but there's also this story. Another serial offender where Substack got takedown requests, right? Accused this guy, David Sullivan, another like Jimmy, what's his name? Savile, accused of multiple accounts of raping women and children in Britain. David Sullivan has so far been protected by the UK court system, UK police, the BBC, and the FA, the Football Association. Right. He owns a soccer team, a football team. Right? Unbelievable. The profile of a serial offender was his report. That got censored. Here's the proof that it was being blocked in the UK in response to a legal demand. Insane. Again, and this was this past week. This is happening in real time. Here's somebody else pointing out that his Substack was withheld in Germany in response to a legal requirement. This is true censorship. 5 hours after returning 4 of my posts in other strategic litigation, their system is broken and he's on the front lines. They are using law to try to silence inconvenient truths. All right. Here is YouTube still acting as a publisher. Junkerman still acting as a tyrant. All right. This is, again, from November 19th. And they're still pulling down videos from September 1st, 2022, from 2022 or from 2002. All right. In Germany, blocked in Germany off YouTube. Here's another one. Here's another one. Germany has very strict laws about this stuff. So rather than potentially defend any of it, they just take it down. And the YouTube video, this one, also doesn't work. That's the one that is now restricted in Germany. So Johnny is being targeted because he is exposing the powerful that have ties to sex offense, sex criminality, and in Junkerman's case, she's another honeypot agent from Mossad with ties to Epstein and Ehud Barak. So that's Johnny Vedmore being silenced. Go support Johnny Vedmore. Newspaste.com.org or .com is his website. If you go to his profile, he's got a link tree, newspaste.com. He's also, by the way, on Substack, although they're censoring the shit out of him there. He's also on Twitter, and he publishes to Twitter as well. Support independent media. All right. Okay. Where are we up to here? We're up to the lightning round. All right, good, because it's almost midnight. And then I have like a ton of GoFundMe stuff. So we're going to be here for a while talking about GoFundMe. Could David Sullivan be the mastermind behind recruiting honeypots or crypto? I don't know if the Junkerman story is related to David Sullivan. I don't remember. I don't think they are. Yeah, Substack ain't going in a good direction. What they are is they are non-committal and they're hands-off. They want to let the lawyers work it out. They don't want to. So their policy is they'll take it down for 10 days and give you 10 days to respond and counterfile. If not, they'll leave it up, or you have to prove that you did not violate copyright. But it's a Wild West. And apparently, again, they've outsourced all of that to AI. Right? All good, fam. Good to see everyone. OMB's here. Right? I don't like how YouTube just went back and put everybody's @ usernames as opposed to whatever the... Does use of a VPN prevent the geo-block? Yes, it does. As long as your VPN doesn't show you to be in one of those countries that's geo-blocked. Absolutely. Boo Substack, absolutely agreed. Wombat, yep. Webcam girls are bait. I agree, Sean. But again, I don't know if this had ties to that. But read the Johnny Vedmore article about that. But talking about YouTube censorship is not going to make them happy. So the ways to support this channel are these methods: Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, IndieNewsNow.com, over at Substack, and Stripe, by the way, funds Substack, and I just got to think about how Stripe didn't reinstate someone and they're being censorious as well. We really this is all we can do. This, or we decide we're going to take crypto, and I don't think anybody here wants to take crypto. I think people know how I feel about crypto. But Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. That's scrolling across the bottom. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Again, the websites you saw. Okay. I'm going to whip through 4 headlines very quickly and not read the articles. Any questions about honeypots can be referred to Cash App PayPal? Cash Patel, Cash App PayPal, yes. He may not be the director of the FBI for much longer is what I'm hearing. Although he's keeping everybody distracted with all these sports scandal things. But Alexis Is My Honey is just a banger of a song. If anybody has heard it over on Twitter, Foundering. He's also Kylan, Kylan on YouTube, but hilariously funny song to the tune of something about a Winnie the Pooh song. But I did want to talk about some articles that I read this week, but don't have time to get to. They're all very long, but they're outstanding, and you should be reading them. And I'm going to link them in the description afterwards, and we'll do a lightning round that'll highlight this segment. So, first one is from somebody in chat, Descent in Bloom. She's been researching this article. She mentioned it to me a couple days before she published it. Hey, I've been researching this thing about ICE kind of seizing people's possessions and making it really impossible for them to get them back after they're held in custody. So 41% of migrants say that their belongings are never returned from ICE custody, and the items left behind at the moment of arrest disappear just as quietly. Man, it's hard to hear, it's hard to see, and hard to know that this is what's going on. And this is our government that's doing this. DescentInBloom.substack.com. Go read this article. She also put out another one this week that was outstanding. Next, Eva Bartlett, Indie Media Award honoree 2022. She also wrote a banger of an article about when medics become targets, Ukrainian strikes on Russian rescue workers, and the silence of Western media. Now, Israel, fuck Israel, has been famous for doing these double tap type of attacks where they will attack an area, wait a half an hour for the cleanup and ambulance crew to come in, and then drop another bomb to take out all the aid workers. And apparently now Ukraine is following suit. So Eva points out here from reverse, since Russia began its SMO in 2022, Western media have repeatedly accused Russia of an unprovoked invasion and of war crimes. Yeah, bullshit. Honest observers, however, state that Russia has acted with considerable restraint in Ukraine, targeting military and logistics areas and not civilians. Otherwise, you would see what they see in Gaza. And remind of Ukraine's 8 years of warring on the civilians in the Donbass prior to the commencement of the SMO in 2022. Further nuancing, they emphasize that once again, in December of 2021, Russia made clear its concerns in hopes of a diplomatic solution, but these were again steadily ignored by Western governments and media because the intent was to provoke war the entire time. Likewise ignored is Ukraine's deliberate shelling and drone striking of medical and rescue personnel. Eva lived in the Donbass. She experienced this firsthand. Under international law, medical and rescue personnel and their vehicles are protected and must not be targeted. Tell that to Israel. Ukraine and its ally Israel are guilty of routinely, deliberately targeting medics and other rescuers, maiming and killing them. These are war crimes, but the West remains mute, instead concocting stories of Russian war crimes like Skull Island in the face of Ukraine's very real ones. She just tells one story about in September of 2019 when she visited the Donbass in a village in the Gorlovka region. She met an elderly resident of living alone in a home falling apart from previous Ukrainian shelling. During that conversation, she said that ambulances wouldn't be able to reach her if she was injured by the shelling. It would be too dangerous for them to try. She was likewise told by the Zaitsevo administration that ambulances could not reach the villagers. A woman died due to huge blood loss because no one could reach her house to take her away in time. She was injured in the shelling and bled to death. There's a lot more here. Again, read Eva's work. She's brilliant. Love her to death. Love her to pieces. Eva Kareen Bartlett.substack.com. She also has a blog, ingaza.wordpress.com, that also houses this article. So read it at either place. Another Indie Media Award honoree, brother of mine, friend of the show, Gordon Dimmack, wrote an article about the clown show of the Epstein saga and about all these child sex traffickers and all the people that are getting away with the crimes that are happening on a daily basis. By the way, I was on a panel discussion last Friday with Gordon at the end of AM Wake Up. That was outstanding. I put that out as an article on my Substack as a standalone. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. I encourage everyone to go watch that. Greg Reese from the Reese Report was there. It was amazing. Love being on stream with him. So Gordon writes this article about a carnival of clowns, talking about that he saw a headline in New York Times describing Jeffrey Epstein as a disgraced financier. Well, that's one way of describing him, I suppose. Kind of like calling Jimmy Savile a former knight, or describing Genghis Khan as a little bit fighty. Not technically incorrect, just so far from the truth that it becomes its own kind of lie. And he says, and that's the point, isn't it? When the truth is a big, fat, ugly pig, a convicted pedophile running blackmail operation connected to billionaires, politicians, foreign intelligence agencies, and royalty, the establishment media's first instinct is to reach for the lipstick. Read this article. It's great. Gordon's amazing. Love him. And finally, I want to laugh about this one a little bit and cry. We've been talking about robots and AI. Well, people are calling them clankers now. It's come down from on high. According to E-Baum's World, you must love the clankers. Hate how AI has entered into every single part of your life? Well, according to the U.S. government, you actually love it. And if you try to pass any legislation claiming you don't, you'll be in violation of federal law. As reported by Axios, numerous states have proposed laws trying to limit AI or its implementation into our lives. In response, the Trump administration is floating an executive order that would make putting any restrictions on AI illegal. I thought they already did that with Lutnick, and they gave him $500 million to basically spend on AI as however he saw fit as the Commerce Secretary. The EO called, quote, eliminating state law obstruction of national AI policy, unquote, insane, alleges that any restriction on AI is actually attempting to regulate interstate commerce. As this is the purview of the national government, not the states, this would make all AI laws de facto unconstitutional. But what if you're a state that doesn't like AI and wants to regulate it? Well, Axios says that the executive order has provisions that say that if you try to regulate it, it'll either sue you or take away grant money. So if you're getting sick of AI, no, you're not. You actually love it. You love the clankers. Clankers. Clankers for all. Fuck the clankers. Resist. Resist. There are so many good independent articles and outlets out there. It disappoints me and makes me crazy that there are so many podcasters, live streamers, and outlets that choose to not amplify amazing work like we just did. I don't think that in the past 2 hours we showed one corporate media article. One. It's possible. You can create, format, and craft an entire show comprised entirely of independent media. We do it multiple times a week here. And I encourage everyone to encourage the show that they go on to amplify more independent media and to stop amplifying corporate media. Please, by all means, stop with the Hill Rising segments and critiquing that crap. Stop with the breaking points and the TYTs and all these, focusing on what they're doing and they're talking about. I didn't have to talk about any of those people, and I covered the news. Keep that in mind when you watch those shows that laugh at what these corporate idiots are doing. It's not funny, and it's not helping anyone. Support the media you want to see. We are user-funded exclusively here. That's our Wall of Fame. Those are the incredible people that have already supported our network. If you want to join that Wall of Fame, and I encourage you to, the ways to do that are Cash App, $ Indie News Network. You've got ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We got a couple of tips earlier tonight from that. Thank you. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family so they don't charge fees. Then we got our website at IndieNewsNow.com. We're live there right now. INNnewsletter.com is one of our Substacks. The other one is IndieMediaToday.com. We're actually live at IndieMediaToday.com. Hello to everybody over at Indie Media Today watching live right now. Okay. This is going to be a tough one. We're going to get to the GoFundMes. These are our friends. We love them, and they need our help. And this is another thing that we can do in independent media that corporate media just won't do, which is shout out and give amplification to people who are struggling, individuals, friends of ours that really need the help. First one we've been talking about for over a year now is my friend Shanda Masta, Indie Media Award honoree for one of the top broadcasters, podcasters, and co-host of Beauty and the Boomer, After Dark, and host of Trailer Park Pundit. Last year, she was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, and we thought she was going to go into remission this summer, but it came back, spread to her liver, and she's been fighting like crazy. And she posted an update earlier today that I wanted to share with you, and I'll read it from her. My dear friends and family, I'm so sorry it's taken me this long to post an update. She doesn't need to apologize. But the truth is, I've been fighting for my life these past weeks in the ICU at the Olympic Medical Center. At the beginning of November, I went in for what was supposed to be my third round of second-line chemo. But after running labs, the doctors told me my immune system had completely crashed. Dangerously low blood counts and zero ability to fight infection. I was told I needed a blood transfusion, bone marrow treatment, and medication to rebuild white blood cells immediately. It wasn't something I wanted, but the alternative was life-threatening, so I agreed. The next day at the hospital, we discovered that my power port was blocked, so everything had to be done through a vein. I received a transfusion, bone marrow transplant, and white blood cell injection, something that causes deep bone pain that is nearly indescribable. Still, they got her port cleared, and they sent her home, and she was hopeful that things were finally stabilizing. She had even felt good enough to do Beauty and the Boomer that Saturday night. She dressed up, she looked great, and you'd never know to watch the show that she was struggling at all, but she apparently was. She dressed up and for the first time in a long time felt a little like her old self again. Seeing so many of our community show up meant the world to her. For a brief moment, life felt normal again. And shout out to everyone here that did show up that night. But the next morning, everything changed. By Sunday night, I knew I was getting very sick. By Monday, I was in the ER with what turned out to be a massive infection. I was given IV antibiotics, pain treatment, and another white blood cell injection and sent home. But by the time I got home, I knew I was going downhill fast. By Tuesday and Wednesday, the pain was unbearable. I could barely get off the floor. In the middle of the night on Wednesday, I returned to the ER. The infection had spread to my kidneys. I was admitted to the ICU, where I spent days tied to monitors, receiving round-the-clock IV, antibiotics, pain management, 2 more blood transfusions. I kept begging to go home to prepare for Thanksgiving, but the doctors kept telling me that I didn't realize how sick I really was. Eventually, one of the doctors agreed to let me go home on the strongest oral antibiotics available and new heart medication because my heart has now started to struggle as well. Right now, she's home and still very sick, but trying to get a turkey thawed and make it through Thanksgiving with her family before she likely has to return to the hospital. She's scheduled for her 4th round of chemo on Tuesday, but with how weak she is, it may require more transfusions and white blood cell treatments before they can even begin. She says, I can't even begin to express how deeply grateful I am for every message, every kind word, every prayer, every donation, every bit of love you sent my way. It's kept me going when I didn't think I could keep fighting. This past week felt like a battle for my life, and your support feels like armor. No matter what or how you celebrate, I wish all of you a beautiful holiday season filled with love, family, and friendship. Time with the people we love is the most precious gift we have, and thank you for standing with me through this. And of course we would. There's a picture. Fuck cancer. We love you, Shanda. This, by the way, is Shanda's GoFundMe. So for those of us who are able to and of means that want to help and can throw a couple of bucks to her GoFundMe, here's the link. Please share if you can. Even if you can't donate. At least get someone. Maybe somebody knows somebody in tribute to someone. You know, she needs the help. Thank you. Equally, as not life-threatening, but also life-threatening, our brother Anthony Malecki, Cowboy Kitty, who might be in chat. I don't know if I've seen his chats yet, but I'm sure he'll be there, and he'll be disappointed that he missed this. But his sister-in-law, Natalia Vlechkova, we've been talking about her for a while, how she was arrested on a routine traffic stop and put in an ICE detention facility, and they're deporting her to Ukraine for not filing paperwork on time. Anthony's quote is that pedophiles are being protected by Congress and our economy is collapsing, but she's got to be deported, right? Fuck this country sometimes, man. So his plea a couple of weeks ago also had a request written letter from 9 years ago. Legal immigrant and hardworking mother taken by ICE, please share. My sister-in-law, Natalia Vlechkova, was taken by ICE after being stopped for registration that was valid up to date, and she owned her own trucking company. She's been held for almost 4 months now without bail after being accused of a DUI because she didn't understand the commands during the test. She was denied a translator. She originally came to America with her daughter seeking asylum, which was granted from her abusive ex-husband. This is her letter for asylum from 9 years ago. And they granted it. But for some reason, they've now revoked her asylum status and want to deport her back to Ukraine. Anthony continues and says, if you believe that someone deserves to be tortured and kept in a cage without a conviction of a crime for 4 months, just an accusation with zero criminal history, you might be a Nazi. Especially if it's a nonviolent misdemeanor with no victims. And this is for profit. Again, we read a Dissent in Bloom article specifically talking about the for-profit system that Natalia is caught up in. And again, here is Natalia's GoFundMe. And I will drop that link in the chats for all. And that will help her daughter, who is not at this point still being deported. But that means that there's a separation, and where's she going to go? What's she going to do? I think she's out of high school now. She's in college, so she's old enough to support herself. But still, I certainly wasn't really able to support myself and live completely on my own at 18. So help out Natalia if you can, please. And then we have Aspen, our friend Aspen Martin and Halo Benson, her mom. We did the Aspen for Justice for Aspen stream almost a month ago already. We're not going to stop talking about Aspen's case. She was set up and she ended up in an RV that was pulled over, had drugs in it, and she was arrested and charged with drug trafficking and faces decades in prison. Indie Media Award honoree Paula Iacella for activism Imagine being forced to fundraise to fight life-altering unjust charges. During this troublesome time, Aspen continues to create her art, which she sells on her website. So consider supporting her by checking out her artwork at artspendstudio.com. This is one of her recent pieces. Hauntingly beautiful. Halo's tweet from October 12th. Again, reminder, Aspen, her daughter, is facing devastating criminal charges after a trip gone wrong. We're trying to raise $12,500 to secure an attorney and hire an investigator to fight these unjust charges. Please help if you can. Share either way. This is the website, by the way. artspendstudio.com. Here's the link tree with a link to the fundraiser, live stream, with a link to the GoFundMe, with a link to her website, with a link to the Descent in Bloom article that talked about it. A lot of things you can do there. And then again, here is the GoFundMe, which has kind of stalled at just shy of 9,000. Remember, we need to get to 12.5 just so they can hire a lawyer to fight, to have discovery, to move to the next step. So that's the GoFundMe there. Justice for Aspen, please. But something happened a funny thing happened along the way to Justice for Aspen. One of the organizers for Justice for Aspen, and one of the main reasons why I decided to do the fundraiser in the first place, was our brother, Charlie Mack. Well, Charlie Mack's account got suspended for sharing the Justice for Aspen live stream on Twitter at CharlieMack1912. Okay. Jesse, I can't stress enough what an oversight this is. We need this man back in action ASAP. Paula, it's now 100% clear why Twitter became X, Xing out our voices. Restore Charlie Mack's account. Even Shanda weighed in. Grr, what the fuck? So much for your freedom of speech, Twitter. But it's not just Paula. Here's Halo. My friend Charlie's been suspended. I'm certain this is a mistake. Charlie was tweeting a lot to help me with a fundraiser. He's not a bot. He's a real person and a good friend. Please review the suspension and reinstate his account. Man in chat, Golden Monarch. Elon Musk, instead of allowing paid grifters, P-bots, and porn bots, and crypto bots, and bros and honeypots to flood all over your platform, how about support does its role and reinstates Charlie Mack? Charlie didn't promote Ponzi schemes. He promoted awareness of someone who needs help. Again, Paula, can't stress enough what an oversight this was, using Charlie's famous little crocheted hearts gif. The little gnome guy. Reinstate Charlie Mack. I got more. All right, she did a tweet storm. All right, last week about this. At reinstate Charlie Mack 1912. All right, I put out a video of Charlie proving that he's not a bot. Real human. Here's Pepper, another one of the organizers from the Justice for Aspen. All right, same thing with Reverend Joe Blank. Support, not a good look. This man is one of the best of us, certifiably human, not spam, not an agent of evil or misinformation or some foreign concern. As far as I've seen, just a good dude who shouldn't be in a penalty box. By the way, Kathy Vogan, journalist from Consortium News, has been suspended for like over a year and continues to pay for her blue check. Because if she doesn't support the blue check, all the videos that are longer than 2.5 minutes would be gone. And she's got original video of John Pilger that she's hoping one day will be restored. Kendra from Denver Free Assange. What the hell? Restore Charlie Mack? He's not a bot. All right, another Paula one. It's unclear why they can randomly rule suspensions, but aren't professionally obligated to review appeals. Reinstate Charlie Mack. Here's our brother Chase. And here's Charlie's Jesse Jet sign at their Cambridge Action for Assange rally. This clever sign crosses over to so many global issues. The hegemonic powers are good at locking fundamental rights in prison and tossing the key. Human rights and international laws are stuck in solitary. And the photo is this sign, and it's Jesse Jet lyrics. Human rights are mutable, and Julian is proof. Our First Amendment rights are stuck in solitary too. Free Charlie Mack's account. All right. Real quick. Also, I wrote an article in the last couple of days. It has not been well read. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I wrote something about labor reporting. Very near and dear to my heart. I've done a show called Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. I've covered the plight of workers across dozens of industries. And I feel like there's not enough publications that report from the perspective of the workers, and even the ones that do have issues on their own. And I call every one of them out. Corporate media, absolute dog shit as well. So go read that. I mentioned the website, IndieNewsNow. This is IndieNewsNow. This is our website where we are news aggregating articles from across independent media. One central place to go, linking you directly to that website so we're not taking clicks or views away from those sites, amplifying them, but also giving you a central place to find the headlines and look at what you might want to investigate further. More than 100 sources, but we also have a link to our merch store where you can pick up a beanie or a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or a tank top. All right. And that's here, and we try to keep the prices as low as possible. All right. Also, the ability to watch live. So anytime INN is live, even if we get deplatformed off all the other 8 platforms where we are, you see we're here and we're live right now at 1080p. High quality. So support independent media. Support INN. Keep the media free. Check out that indie shirt with the tie. I need to get one with the green tie still. I say that every week. I got to send that over to Ryan. He did add a couple down at the bottom, I noticed, of the t-shirts. And we got stickers, too. I know a couple of people have picked up stickers. But at the bottom of the t-shirt, there's now an Indie News Now t-shirt. So if you want to pick up, and I love these beanies. They're incredible. And they're warm, $19 plus shipping. You're not going to get a much better deal on a beanie right there, and none that say INN. But let me go back to the t-shirts. I wanted to go to the bottom of the t-shirt one. Let's go to view all, and we go down to the bottom, and there is, hey, look at that, Indie News Now. So you can pick up an Indie News Now t-shirt, black or white. I like the black one better. $20. You can also get this INN the Ocho shirt, both women and unisex. So check that out. That's Ryan at Big Frog is the person that administers the store for us. Thank you. Shout out to Ryan, who also curates the Independent Review every Friday. So this is our Big Frog store. All right. I've got through it all. I can't believe I got through it all as fast as I did. I figured it would take closer to 3 hours, but beautiful. Yeah, Descent in Bloom also has merch, but she forgets to promote it. Yep. So go check out her merch wherever you can, wherever she'll probably put a link to it somewhere over at her Substack. Or she's got a link tree also. linktr.ee/Descent in Bloom. You can go check that out. Okay, everyone. I love you all. I'm so glad that you all came and hung out with me tonight and every Tuesday night and have been supportive of this move to a new show, to Indie News Now, moving to Tuesday nights, moving boats to 11 p.m. on Sundays. This Sunday, we will be doing boats, and it will be an uncensored, no YouTube, Rumble only. Rumble and Kick and all the others, but just no YouTube. And then tomorrow, INN News with Reef and Colin. Reef will be reading the article that he wrote about Victor Marx, who's running for governor of Colorado, as well as some other stories. And then Friday, check out Angel in the Afternoon. Saturday, we'll have Pro Wrestling Talk. Sunday, we'll have boats. And then we'll be back on Tuesday for another INN Indie News Now Live. That's the show, right? Indie News Now Live. All right. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I'll see you soon, fam. I love you all. Have a great night.
Holy shnikes.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?